The moment Trevor handed me that folder, I knew this wasn't a wedding. It was a merger and I was the asset. It was a sunlit morning in Sedona, the kind that makes everything feel magical, unreal. The red rocks glowed in the distance, and the air smelled faintly of wild sage and blooming desert flowers. I was in the bridal suite of the Canyon Rose Resort, wrapped in ivory silk and soft promises. The venue buzzed outside, full of Chicago's business elite and tech investors who'd flown out just to attend the most strategic wedding of the year. Trevor Wallace, son of biotech tycoon Dr. Candace Wallace, was marrying a self-made startup founder. Me, Savannah Cole, founder of Savannah Care. 30 minutes before the ceremony, I was adjusting my veil in the mirror when Trevor walked in, sharp in his tailored tux, looking like something out of a GQ spread, but his eyes, they weren't warm. They were calculating. "Hey babe, there's just one last thing," he said, voice smooth but clipped. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim black folder. "What's this?" I asked, already knowing. "Just a formality. Legal stuff." "My mother insisted," he said, flashing a strained smile. I took the folder and opened it, my fingers already trembling. I skimmed it. My company was mentioned twice, hidden under vague language about intellectual property, marital asset restructuring, shared equity. It was a prenup, but not a fair one. Not even close. If I signed it, Trevor and his family would have the right to my company's proprietary software in the event of a divorce. Worse, I wouldn't be allowed to speak publicly about any aspect of our marriage or their business. Ever. "This isn't what we discussed," I said quietly. "It's just to protect both of us," he said. "You know how the press is. And we're about to be one of the most high-profile couples in biotech." I looked up at him. "What happens if I don't sign it?" His tone hardened. "Then there's no wedding. But it's your choice." Behind the closed doors, I could hear the string quartet tuning. Guests were being seated. My mom, my team, my investors, all waiting. I smiled, slow and deliberate. "Okay," I said. "Let me just grab something first." I reached into my bouquet where Jules' me best friend and attorney had hidden a folder of our own. "If we're doing prenups," I said, handing it to him, "then let's both sign one." Trevor's smile faltered. "What is this?" "Just a formality," I echoed his words. He opened the folder, and I watched the blood drain from his face. And in that moment, I knew. The wedding wasn't over. It hadn't even started. People always assume women like me had help. A rich dad, a silent investor, a lucky break. The truth is far less glamorous. My story started in a tiny apartment in East Denver. My mom, a night shift ER nurse, raised me alone after my dad disappeared when I was 2. She worked 3 jobs some months just to keep the lights on, and my asthma meds refilled. I got a full ride to Stanford. But when Mom was diagnosed with early-stage lymphoma during my sophomore year, I gave up the scholarship, transferred back to Colorado State, and worked 50 hours a week to cover her treatments. That's when Savannah Care was born, out of frustration, mostly. I watched my mother battle not just cancer but the healthcare system. Confusing paperwork, missed calls, delayed diagnostics. I started building a patient care platform from scratch, first as a side project, then a mission. I coded late at night in our kitchen while Mom slept on the couch beside me, her wig resting on the coffee table. By the time I turned 29, Savannah Care had launched in 3 states, partnered with 2 hospital chains, and secured Series A funding. Every penny I made went back into the company. I didn't even take a salary until year 3. And then came Trevor. He wasn't like the other suits I met at tech conferences. He was charming, curious. He asked about my vision, not my revenue. We met at a healthcare innovation summit in Austin. He spilled his drink on me. I laughed. He offered to pay for dry cleaning, then asked me to dinner. At first, I couldn't believe someone like him, a man from Chicago's wealthiest circle, was genuinely interested in me, but he was thoughtful, affectionate, supportive. When we first kissed, I thought, maybe it's finally my turn for something good. Our relationship moved fast, but not recklessly. He said he admired my independence, my drive. He called me his North Star. When he proposed during a hike in Telluride, I cried so hard I forgot to say yes. I didn't think to question his intentions. Why would I? He celebrated my victories. He told his family I was the future of healthcare, but little things stood out in hindsight, like how his mother Candace always smiled with her mouth but not her eyes. Or how Trevor once joked, "It's cute how protective you are of your little company." Back then, I laughed. Now, I hear the warning in every word. I gave him my trust, my heart, my future. I even adjusted our business roadmap so Savannah Care could better align with Wallace Biocorp's expansion plans at his suggestion, because I thought this was love, because I believed we were building something together. But now, staring at the prenup in my hand, I wonder, was I building an empire or digging my own grave? 2 weeks before the wedding, Jules stormed into my office like she was on fire. "Cancel your next meeting," she said. "Now." I blinked. "I have a call with our medical compliance team in 10. "Push it," she snapped. "We have a bigger problem." I closed my laptop slowly. Jules wasn't just my best friend. She was also one of the sharpest contract lawyers in Colorado. And she never used that tone unless it was life or death or lawsuit. She tossed a manila envelope on my desk. I got a call from my cousin. He works in estate law in Chicago. One of his interns just finished proofreading a prenup for Wallace Biocorp. My blood turned cold. "The Wallace prenup?" I asked quietly. She nodded. "Savannah, it's yours. Or it's about to be." I opened the envelope with shaking hands. There it was, a mirror of the folder Trevor had handed me this morning. But this one had internal notes, legal strategy, edits Candace had made, highlighted sections. Clause 4.2. Full transfer of Savannah Care's founding rights into a joint marital trust. Clause 6.1. Non-disclosure of all marital matters, business or personal, for life. Clause 7.4. In the event of divorce, Savannah forfeits all claims to Wallace family holdings, but not vice versa. I looked up at Jules. This is theft." "No," she said. "This is corporate acquisition disguised as marriage." I felt dizzy. "And get this," she added. "They've hired someone to look into your background, a private investigator. His name's Greg Tiller. He's already reached out to your former landlords and requested sealed court records." "What are they looking for?" She hesitated. "Your father." I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. "My father's been gone since I was 2, I said, voice raw. "What could they possibly find? They're counting on your past being messy. Anything they can use to discredit you or pressure you if you resist signing. The closer they get to the ceremony, the more trapped they think you'll feel." I sank into my chair. "They never loved me," I whispered. "They never even saw me. They see your code base, your patents, your connections. You're not a bride to them, Savannah. You're an acquisition." That night I sat alone in the dark, reading every line of the prenup over and over, and I thought of all the moments that should have warned me. Candace once saying, "You remind me of myself, only less refined." Trevor insisting I let his mother's legal team just glance at our quarterly reports. The time he asked for a full list of my beta investors just for transparency. Each moment had seemed innocuous. Now it felt like being groomed for a hostile takeover, by people who smiled while they gutted you. The worst part? I'd given them everything willingly, my company, my trust, my heart. But they'd made one mistake. They underestimated me. I sat on the floor of my condo at 2:12 a.m., the prenup spread out like an autopsy report beside me. The blinds were half open. Denver's skyline blinked quietly in the distance, unbothered, untouched. I wasn't crying. Not yet. I was just numb. When the call came, I almost didn't answer. "Savannah?" My mom's voice broke through the silence, soft and concerned. "Honey, what's going on?" Jules called me. I exhaled shakily. "Mom, we need to talk." "About Dad." There was a pause. "Is this about that man who called me last week?" she asked quietly. "What man?" He said he was researching successful single mothers for a book, but he asked about your father. He knew. Details. Things I've never spoken about. Savannah II didn't know what to say. My heart pounded. "You should have told me." "I was trying to protect you," she said, her voice trembling now. "Your father, he wasn't just a man who walked out. He was arrested when you were 2. Medicare fraud, falsified prescriptions. It was a big case. I buried it. Buried him. I closed my eyes. They'd found it. Of course they had. Why didn't you ever tell me?" I asked. "Because you're nothing like him," she whispered. "You built your life on helping people. You're everything good I ever did." I wanted to believe her, but shame had already wrapped itself around my throat. Would people still believe in Savannah Care if they found out about my father? Would I? I hung up, sat in the dark for what felt like hours. Somewhere out there, Trevor was sleeping soundly in a 5-star suite his mother probably reserved, knowing full well they were about to obliterate the life I'd built. He thought I'd roll over. That I'd sign in silence. That I'd be too ashamed of my father's past to fight. Maybe he was right. For a moment, I pictured it, walking away, canceling everything. Fading out before the cameras rolled, letting him spin the story, letting the headlines reduce me to difficult bride or unstable founder. But then I remembered what my mom always said when things got hard. "Don't walk away, baby. Make them watch." And just like that, something shifted. Not hope, not yet, but stillness. Like the air right before a thunderstorm, I wasn't ready to strike back. Not tonight, but I wasn't going to run either. Not anymore. The next morning, I texted Jules 2 words. "Plan B?" She called within seconds. "I was hoping you'd say that." We spent the next 72 hours writing what we called our counterstrike. A prenup of our own crafted by one of the most ruthless corporate law firms in Denver. Every clause was a trapdoor. Any hint of fraud, manipulation, or coercion would void the contract and trigger a mandatory investigation into Wallace Biocorp's interests tied to Savannah Care. Clause 8.7. Any surveillance, investigation, or blackmail if uncovered would void all Wallace claims on my company and subject them to breach of ethics arbitration. Clause 10.2. Any verbal or written record of intent to use the marriage as strategic leverage would trigger full dissolution of the merger and public disclosure. Trevor wanted a weapon. I gave him a mirror. Then came the tech. Hidden microphones, voice-activated cameras installed in my apartment and workspace, courtesy of my lead engineer who thought he was helping prep for wedding press interviews. He didn't need to know the real purpose. The first hit came fast. A recording of Candace on speakerphone. Make sure she doesn't see Clause 4. If she balks, use the father. Greg has what we need. Then, Trevor replying, "I'll handle her. Savannah trusts me more than anyone." The second hit was more personal. I reached out to Alyssa Bright, Trevor's ex-fiancé. the one who'd vanished 6 weeks before their wedding 3 years ago. I found her through a private women in tech group. Her profile had been dormant since 2020. I sent one sentence. He did it again. Want to talk? She replied within an hour. Where and when? We met in a quiet cafe outside Boulder. Alyssa was thinner than in the old photos. Nervous, but steady. I was supposed to marry him, she said. 2 days before the ceremony, Candace handed me a prenup so brutal it made me cry. When I refused, she threatened my brother's nonprofit, said she'd pull every grant he had if I didn't walk away quietly. So you did, I whispered. I didn't have a Jules, she replied. Or the fight left in me. She slid a flash drive across the table. Emails, recordings, my originals. I kept everything, just in case. That night, Jules, Alyssa, and I gathered in my apartment like soldiers around a war map. We're going to bury them, Jules said, eyes glinting. No. I corrected her. We're going to let them bury themselves. We compiled a press kit, sent encrypted files to 2 investigative journalists, and contacted the SEC through a whistleblower portal. But the masterstroke? A time delay system built into my cloud. At 11:30 a.m. on my wedding day, emails, recordings, and footage would be sent automatically to newsrooms, regulators, and BioCorp's board members. If Trevor pushed me into a corner, I'd push back with the truth. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice, and making sure they never did this to another woman again. The morning of the wedding, the Arizona sun painted the desert in golden fire. Birds circled lazily above the red cliffs. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Inside the Canyon Rose Resort, I was slipping into a gown hand-stitched in Milan satin with a subtle train and pearls sewn into the back like Morse code. Jules called it my armor. Bella, my makeup artist, glanced at me nervously. You good? I smiled. Steady. More than good. Jules had already confirmed. Press kits pre-scheduled. SEC packet sent. Internal Wallace board recipients locked. Alyssa would arrive at 11:10 sharp. At 10:42, my phone buzzed. Trevor. Hey babe, need to talk for 1 sec before we start. Just something small. Showtime. He met me outside the bridal suite, folder in hand. That same leather one, the same fake concern on his face. I just want to get this out of the way, he said, voice gentle. For both our peace of mind. He handed me the prenup like it was a gift, not a trap. I skimmed it again for the audience this time. I let my fingers shake, just enough. This says I give up all rights to Savannah Care. He smiled, touched my arm. Just legally, sweetheart. In spirit, it's still yours. I blinked, like I didn't already know. What happens if I don't sign? His face hardened. We have 200 guests waiting. It wouldn't look great for either of us. I nodded. Okay then, I said, opening my bouquet and pulling out my folder. Let's sign both. Trevor frowned. What's this? Just something Jules and I put together. Fair's fair, right? He opened eye tanned. I watched the color drain from his face. You can't be serious, he whispered, flipping pages. Clause 6. Clause 10. This is insane. It's legal, I said softly. Everything in that contract is just a formality. Like yours. His hands trembled. You knew. I stepped closer. I knew everything. The church doors opened. Music began. The quartet started playing our song Canon in D. The guests rose. Trevor didn't move. Sign it, I said sweetly. Or I'll walk down the aisle and tell everyone why there won't be a wedding. He looked at me like I was a stranger. You don't understand what you're doing. Oh, but I do, I whispered. And so will they. In about 10 minutes, he grabbed my arm. Savannah, please. But I'd already turned. At the altar, I stood beside him, both of us beaming for the crowd. But only one of us was pretending. Just as the officiant opened his mouth, Alyssa walked in. She wore a crimson dress and carried nothing but her phone. Behind her came 2 reporters, a woman in a black suit, and someone from the SEC. A murmur swept through the pews. Then the projector screen meant to show a sweet slideshow of baby pictures flickered. Instead, audio, video, emails. A clip of Trevor, laughing on a recorded call with his mother. She'll sign whatever I put in front of her. She still thinks I'm in love. Another of Candace. Once she signs, we gut that platform and roll it into our clinical data division. Gasps. The officiant froze. Candace stood from the front row, her face pale. You little careful, Jules called from the side. We're recording everything. Trevor turned to me, eyes wide. You planned this? I looked at him, steady. Number, I engineered it. SEC agents moved quietly toward the back of the church. Candace's phone buzzed, so did several board members. The journalists began live streaming. Then came the final blow. Alyssa stepped onto the altar and said, loud enough for the mic to pick up, "This isn't the first time. He did it to me too. And I have proof." The room exploded. Guests stood, shouting. Some walked out, others pulled out their phones to record. Trevor lunged for the projector cord, but Kenny, that Kenny, Trevor's former friend and my quiet ally, stepped in front of him. "Don't," Kenny said. "You've done enough." I turned to the crowd, raised my voice above the chaos. "This was never a wedding," I said. "It was a setup. But I'm not the victim here, I'm the witness. And I'm making sure you all see what they are." Jules walked to my side, handed me my coat. I turned to Trevor one last time. "You could have had a life with me. You chose control. Now I choose truth." Then I walked out of the cathedral not as a bride but as someone who had just detonated a dynasty built on lies. I didn't go back to the reception. While the guests scrambled for answers, while the Wallaces scrambled for lawyers, I walked barefoot across the resort lawn, heels in one hand, Savannah's sun glowing behind me like a spotlight. I'd never felt more exposed. Or more free. That night, back in my Denver apartment, I sat on the couch still wearing the dress. Half of the pearls had come loose in the chaos. I didn't care. My inbox was a war-zone media inquiries, legal threats, congratulations from complete strangers. But one message stood out. From SEC Liaison Office Subject, Wallace Biocorp Investigation, Status Update. "Thank you for your submission. Our team has confirmed the authenticity of the materials. We'll be in contact soon." Then another from Alyssa. "3 more women have reached out. They're ready to speak. You weren't the only one." Just the first who said it out loud. I sat quietly, rereading the messages. My company's stock had actually gone up, investors praising my integrity. A new hospital in Oregon had just signed a licensing agreement with Savannah Care. The work I thought I might lose was stronger than ever. I opened a blank document on my laptop and began to type. Not code, not strategy, just truth. On the day of my wedding, my fiancé handed me a prenup. He thought I was the weak link, but what he didn't know was I'd already cut the cord. I posted it anonymously to a women in tech forum. Within minutes, comments flooded in. "Thank you for this. This made me cry, saving this for when I forget what power looks like. The next morning, I donated my wedding dress to a nonprofit that supports women leaving abusive relationships. Then I boxed up every card, every fake letter Trevor wrote, and dumped them into recycling. I kept only one thing, my prenup, framed it, hung it behind my office desk, a reminder that no one gets to rewrite your story unless you let them. Candace Wallace resigned 2 weeks later. Trevor issued a weak apology through a lawyer. Wallace Biocorp lost half its board by month's end. Turns out, when you build an empire on lies, the fall doesn't need fireworks. It just needs one person willing to light the match, and I did. The final message I received that night was from Jules, just 4 words. "Well played, Mrs. Nobody." I laughed. And I whispered back, "It's Dr. Nobody, actually." Because in the end, this wasn't about love lost or revenge won. It was about truth and letting the world see what power looks like, not when it shouts, but when it stays standing. So here's my question for you, whoever's still reading. Have you ever been underestimated? Good. Let them. They never see it coming. Sometimes, the most powerful justice doesn't come from a courtroom. It comes from a woman who refuses to stay silent. If this story moved you, if you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, or told to just be quiet and sign, then you're not alone. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in Savannah's shoes? And if you believe the world needs more stories where truth wins, where quiet strength rises, subscribe now. Because this isn't just a channel, it's a place where betrayal ends and reckoning begins.